My family didn't come to my birthday, which I celebrated at an expensive restaurant. I waited for them for 2 hours and then got a text. TS is a lesson for not paying for our vacation. So, I blocked their numbers. I stared at the email for a good 5 minutes, not quite believing what I was seeing. After 5 years of late nights, canceled weekend plans and endless spreadsheets, I'd finally gotten the promotion. Mid-level manager to senior project director, with a salary increase that made my eyes water. I, Stacy Miller, had finally made it. My phone buzzed. It was Mom. Hey, are you coming for dinner tonight? Dad made his famous pot roast. I hesitated. Family dinners weren't exactly my idea of celebration, but I hadn't seen them in weeks. Yeah, I'll be there. Around 6? Perfect. See you then, honey. I hung up and smiled. Maybe this would be nice. I could share my good news, and for once, maybe I'd be the center of attention instead of the twins. Jake and Emma had always been my parents' pride and joy. 8 years younger than me, they'd stolen the spotlight from the moment they were born. While I was working through college, they were getting straight A's in high school. While I was starting my career, they were the stars of their university. Now they were fresh college graduates, still living at home, still the golden children. I pulled up to my parents' modest suburban home at 6:15. Dad was in his usual chair, watching TV. Mom was setting the table. The twins were glued to their phones. We sat around the table, passing dishes back and forth. Dad talked about his part-time job at the hardware store. Mom mentioned something about her book club. Emma complained about job hunting, and Jake scrolled through his phone under the table. So, I said during a pause, I have some news. 4 pairs of eyes looked at me with mild interest. I got promoted today, senior project director. It comes with a pretty big raise too. The reaction was unexpected. That's wonderful, honey, Mom exclaimed, reaching over to squeeze my hand. About time they recognized your talent, Dad added, looking proud. Jake and Emma exchanged glances. Way to go, sis, Jake said, giving me a fist bump. That's awesome, Stacy, Emma added. Does this mean you're buying dinner next time? We all laughed, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, really seen. Tell us about the new position, Dad prompted, actually putting down his fork to listen. For the next 20 minutes, I talked about my job, my team, the big project we were starting. They asked questions. They seemed interested. It was like I'd stepped into some parallel universe where my achievements mattered to my family. As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Growing up, I'd always been the responsible one. The one they called when they needed something. Money for bills, help with the twins' college tuition, a new refrigerator when theirs broke down. I never minded helping, not really. But it was nice to be acknowledged for something other than my checkbook. The next few weeks were a blur. I threw myself into work with renewed energy. My team was incredible, smart, dedicated people who were excited about our new project. If we pulled it off, it would mean millions for the company. Then the calls started coming. Stacy, honey, can you help us with the property tax bill? It's higher than we expected this year. Hey sis, my laptop died. Can you spot me $200 until I find a job? Stacy dear, the car needs repairs. Your father's hours got cut again. Each request was reasonable. Each amount was manageable. And each time I transferred the money without hesitation. They were my family after all. The twins started texting me regularly, which was new. They'd never shown much interest in my life before. Now they wanted to know how my day was, what I was working on, if they could come over for dinner. Your place is so much nicer than Mom and Dad's, Emma said one evening, sprawled on my couch after demolishing the pasta I'd made. Yeah. And your fridge is always full, Jake added, helping himself to another beer. Must be nice having all that money, Emma said, examining her nails. I laughed it off, but something about her tone made me uneasy. I work hard for it, I reminded them. Sure, Jake said, pulling out his wallet. Speaking of which, can I borrow $100? Car insurance is due. I handed him the cash without comment. What else could I do? They were family. 3 months into my new role, we completed the big project ahead of schedule. The client was thrilled, the company made a fortune, and my team got the recognition they deserved. I received a substantial bonus, enough for a down payment on my own place. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and called my realtor friend, Derek. I want to buy a place, I told him. Something in the city, good neighborhood, nice layout. I've got enough for a decent down payment now. About time, Derek said. Let me see what I can find. I didn't tell my family about my plans. I wanted it to be a surprise, something to celebrate. For once, I'd be putting myself first, and I couldn't wait to see their reactions. For the next month, Derek sent me listings almost daily. Some were too small, others too far from work, and many were way outside my budget even with the bonus. But finally, he found it. The perfect apartment in the heart of downtown. It's got everything you wanted, Derek said as he unlocked the door. 2 bedrooms, open layout, and check out that view. I walked to the windows and gasped. The city skyline stretched before me, glittering in the afternoon sun. The kitchen had gleaming countertops and new appliances. The master bedroom was spacious with a walk-in closet. It was everything I'd dreamed of. What's the catch? I asked, certain there had to be one. Derek shrugged. No catch, owner's relocating overseas and needs to sell quickly. If you want it, we should move fast. I signed the paperwork that afternoon, using my bonus for the down payment and securing a mortgage for the rest. For the first time in my life, I owned something substantial, something that was just for me. Meanwhile, the calls and texts from my family continued to increase. Stacy, your father's back is acting up again. We need to hire someone to mow the lawn, Mom said one evening. How much? I asked automatically, already reaching for my banking app. Just $300. You're such a good daughter. 2 days later, Jake texted me asking for money to fix his car. The day after that, Emma needed cash for a job interview outfit. Each request came with effusive thanks and promises to pay me back someday. Promises we both knew they wouldn't keep. I didn't mind that much, though. I was making good money, and it felt nice to be appreciated, even if it was just for my financial support. Saturday morning, I woke up filled with excitement. I was going to tell my family about the apartment. I imagined their reactions, surprise, joy, maybe even a little pride in what I'd accomplished. I spent the morning baking Mom's favorite lemon bars to bring over. When I arrived, the house was quiet. Dad was dozing in his recliner, the TV murmuring in the background. Mom was at the kitchen table, sorting through bills with a furrowed brow. The twins were nowhere to be seen. They went out with friends, Mom explained when I asked. Should be back for dinner, though. I helped Mom prepare the meal, chopping vegetables while she marinated the chicken. We chatted about neighborhood gossip and her book club, easy conversation that required little effort. Dad eventually woke up and joined us, talking about a project he was working on in the garage. It was almost normal, almost like we were a regular family without the undercurrents of expectation and obligation. The twins burst through the door at 6, bringing with them a wave of energy and noise. They bickered about something that had happened, barely acknowledging my presence until Mom announced that dinner was ready. Around the table, I listened to them talk about their day, waiting for the right moment. Finally, during a lull in conversation, I pulled the folder with my new apartment documents from my bag. I have some news, I said. Unable to keep the smile off my face, I bought an apartment. I used my bonus for the down payment. I slid the papers onto the table, showing them photos of my new place. It's downtown, close to work, 2 bedrooms, great view. I move in next month. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. Jake's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Emma's smile froze. Dad cleared his throat. Don't you think you should have consulted with us first, Stacy? I blinked, confused. Why would I need to consult with you about buying my own apartment? Because we're family, Mom said, her voice taking on an edge I rarely heard, and families make important decisions together. But it's my money, I said slowly. I earned it. That bonus could have been put to better use, Dad said, pushing his plate away. The house needs a new roof, and Jake's still paying off his student loans. I stared at them, unable to believe what I was hearing. I've been helping you guys for years, I said. I paid for part of the twins' college tuition. I send you money every time you ask. And we're grateful, Mom said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But this seems selfish, Stacy. The word hung in the air between us, selfish. Because I'd finally done something for myself after years of putting their needs first. Emma wouldn't meet my eyes. Jake suddenly found his phone fascinating. Dad stared at his plate, jaw clenched. The rest of the dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. I tried to start conversations, but was met with one-word answers or nothing at all. When I stood to leave, no one tried to stop me. "I guess I'll see you later," I said at the door. Dad grunted. Mom gave a tight nod. The twins didn't even look up. I drove home with tears blurring my vision, feeling like I'd done something terrible when all I'd done was buy myself a home. For the first time, I saw clearly what our relationship had become. I was an ATM, not a daughter or sister. 3 days of silence was all I could take. I missed my family despite everything, and the hurt had morphed into a determination to fix things. I drove to my parents' house unannounced on a Tuesday evening, rehearsing what I'd say the entire way there. When Mom opened the door, her surprise was evident. "Stacy?" "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside wordlessly. Inside, Dad was watching TV while the twins sat at the dining table with laptops open. All three looked up when I entered, their expressions a mix of surprise and wariness. "I wanted to invite you all out to dinner," I announced before I lost my nerve. "Saturday night, at Emilio's, my treat. I thought we could talk things out." The silence stretched for an uncomfortable moment before Mom spoke. "Emilio's? That fancy Italian place downtown?" I nodded. "I made reservations for 7. Jake and Emma exchanged glances, a silent communication that excluded me as always. "We'll be there," Dad finally said, his voice gruff. "Right, everyone?" Mom nodded, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, that's very generous, Stacy." Saturday arrived and I spent extra time getting ready, wanting to look my best. I wore my favorite dress and arrived at Emilio's 15 minutes early to make sure everything was perfect. They showed up exactly on time, dressed in their finest clothes. Mom had even put on makeup, something she rarely bothered with. The waiter appeared to take our drink orders. Dad chose their most expensive scotch. Mom selected a pricey wine. The twins both ordered cocktails that cost more than an entire meal at our usual restaurants. I just smiled and ordered a glass of house wine. "So," I said after the waiter left, "I wanted to apologize if I upset you all with my apartment news. I should have discussed it with you first." The lie tasted bitter, but I wanted peace more than pride. Mom reached across the table to pat my hand. "We were just surprised, that's all. And a little hurt that you didn't include us in such a big decision." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry." Just like that, the tension dissolved. Dad started telling stories from work. Emma showed me pictures from a party she'd attended. Jake talked about a job interview he had coming up. When dinner arrived, I wasn't surprised to see they'd all ordered the most expensive items on the menu. Dad's steak, Mom's seafood platter, Emma's truffle risotto, Jake's veal chops. The bill came to over $600, but seeing them laugh and talk with me again almost made it worth it. Almost. After that night, things returned to a familiar pattern, but with a noticeable shift. The requests for money became more frequent, and for larger amounts. My parents called at least twice a week, always with some new expense they needed help with. The twins texted daily, their messages always ending with requests for cash. I kept track at first, documenting each transfer in a spreadsheet, but it became depressing to see how much I was giving them. I stopped looking at the totals. A few weeks later, during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances throughout the meal. As I helped clear the dishes, Dad cleared his throat. "Stacy, your mother and I need to talk to you about something important." My stomach tightened. I sat back down at the table, noting how the twins suddenly found excuses to leave the room. "What's going on?" I asked. Mom folded her hands on the table. "We're having trouble making ends meet, honey. The bills keep piling up, and with the house repairs last month, we need some regular help." Dad cut in. "We were hoping you could send us about $1,500 a month, just until things get better." I stared at them, processing the request. I could have pointed out that if Jake and Emma got jobs, they wouldn't be in this situation. I could have reminded them that they were choosing to work part-time while supporting 2 able-bodied adults who contributed nothing financially. I could have said a lot of things. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay, I can do that." The relief on their faces was immediate. Mom's eyes welled with tears. "You're such a good daughter," she said, squeezing my hand. "We don't know what we'd do without you." I set up the automatic transfer that evening, $1,500 on the first of every month, directly to my parents' account. I could afford it, even with my new mortgage. And if it brought peace to our family, maybe it was worth it. 6 months passed, the monthly transfers continued, and my family seemed happy. I was busy with a new major project at work, another opportunity to prove myself and potentially earn another bonus. My team was depending on me, and I was working longer hours than ever. Then came the dinner that changed everything. When I arrived, they were all hunched around Dad's laptop, arguing excitedly. "The Mackay Suite has a better view," Emma was saying, "but the Royal Hawaiian has that exclusive beach access." "What's going on?" I asked, setting my purse down. They jumped, as if they'd forgotten I was coming. Mom quickly minimized the window on the laptop, but not before I caught a glimpse of white sand beaches and palm trees. "Oh, Stacy, you're here," Mom said. "We were just looking at vacation options." "Hawaii?" I asked, hanging up my coat. Mom nodded, a slight flush creeping up her neck. "We've been thinking about taking a family trip. Your father and I are exhausted from work, and the twins need a break from job hunting." I bit back a laugh. "A break from job hunting? They've been out of college for over a year." Jake shot me a glare. "It's not easy to find good jobs these days." "Anyway," Emma cut in, "we've already picked out the perfect resort package. It's only about $20,000 for all 4 of us." I blinked. "Wait, 4? Aren't I included?" An awkward silence fell. Mom and Dad exchanged looks. "Well, honey," Mom finally said, "we know how busy you are with work, and your project is so important. We didn't think you could get away," Dad finished for her, not meeting my eyes. The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You want me to pay for your vacation, but you don't want me to come with you? When you put it like that, it sounds bad," Emma said with a nervous laugh. "How else should I put it?" I asked, my voice rising. "You expect me to shell out $20,000 so you can all go to Hawaii without me? You make good money now," Mom said, her voice hardening, "and family helps family." "I have a mortgage now," I reminded them. "And utilities and property taxes. I can't just throw away $20,000 on a vacation I'm not even invited to." Dad's face darkened. "So your fancy apartment is more important than your family's happiness?" "That's not what I said," I protested. "But this is ridiculous. You work part-time, by choice, the twins don't work at all. Maybe if everyone got full-time jobs, you could pay for your own vacation." The room went silent. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Dad stood up abruptly. "I think you should leave," he said quietly. "We don't want to hear any more." I gathered my things, hands shaking with anger and hurt. No one spoke as I walked to the door. No one said goodbye. As I drove home, tears streamed down my face. But they weren't sad tears. They were angry ones. For the first time, I was truly seeing my family for what they were. A week after the Hawaii vacation blow-up, my family still hadn't called. I wasn't ready to apologize. This time I had nothing to apologize for. But as my birthday approached, I found myself missing them despite everything. "Maybe they've had time to think," I told myself as I dialed Mom's number. "Maybe they'll see how unreasonable they were being." The phone rang 4 times before she picked up. "Stacy," she said, her voice neutral. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to let you know that my birthday is next Saturday, and I've reserved a table at Carlton's Steakhouse. I'd like you all to come." I held my breath, waiting. There was a pause, then, "What time?" 7. "I've got the private room in the back." "We'll be there," she said after another pause. No happy early birthday, no "we've missed you," just a flat statement of attendance. I hung up feeling both relieved and uneasy, but at least they were coming. I spent the week preparing for my birthday dinner. I bought a new dress, emerald green silk that cost more than I'd normally spend, but it was a special occasion. I even splurged on having my hair and makeup done professionally. At 6:45 on Saturday evening, I arrived at Carlton's. The hostess showed me to the private room I'd reserved. I ordered a glass of champagne and settled in. 7 came and went. Then 7:30. By 8, I was on my 3rd glass of champagne, and had called each family member twice, with no answer. At 8:30, the waiter approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, would you like to order? The kitchen will be closing the main service soon." "Just a few more minutes," I said, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. "They'll be here." By 9, I knew they weren't coming. I paid for my drinks and the room fee, tipped the staff generously for their patience, and left with as much dignity as I could muster. In my car, I checked my phone one more time. No calls, no texts. But just as I was about to drive away, a notification popped up, a message from Mom. My hand shook as I opened it. This is what happens when you're selfish and don't help your family. Maybe next time you'll think twice before saying no to us. Happy birthday. I stared at the message, unable to believe what I was reading. They had deliberately stood me up on my birthday to teach me a lesson for not paying for their vacation. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing between hurt and fury. When I got to my apartment, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine. Happy birthday to me, I whispered, raising my glass to my empty living room. Then I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic $1,500 monthly transfer to my parents. I felt a strange calm as I hit confirm. Not guilt, not anxiety, just relief. The next week passed in a blur of work and quiet evenings alone. No calls from family, no texts, no emails. It was peaceful, if a bit lonely. Until the following Sunday, when my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls from Mom, Dad, Jake, and Emma. Voicemails, text messages, all within the span of an hour. I ignored them all day, focusing instead on a report I needed to finish for work. But by evening, curiosity got the better of me. I listened to the first voicemail. Stacy, it's Mom. The money didn't arrive in our account this month. There must be some mistake. Call me back immediately. The second, Stacy, we're waiting for your call. The bank says there's no pending transfer. This is serious. By the fifth message, Mom was frantic. We have bills due tomorrow. What are we supposed to do? Call us right now. I waited until 10 p.m., then called back. Mom answered on the first ring. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you all day. The money didn't come through. We have utility bills. I canceled the transfers, I said, cutting her off. There was a moment of stunned silence. You what? Her voice was barely a whisper. I canceled the monthly transfers. I'm not sending money anymore. But why? We need that money. We'll lose the house. You stood me up on my birthday to punish me, I said, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling in my chest. And then you had the nerve to text me that it was a lesson. Well, I learned it. I learned that I'm just a bank account to you. That's not true, Mom protested. We were just upset about the vacation. We didn't mean anything by it, it was just a joke. I laughed, a sharp sound with no humor. Some joke. Leaving your daughter alone in a restaurant on her birthday. We're sorry, okay, we made a mistake. But please, Stacy, we really need that money. We don't have enough for utilities. That's not my problem anymore, I said. Maybe it's time for Dad to work full-time. Maybe it's time for Jake and Emma to get jobs. Any jobs. Instead of waiting for their dream careers to fall into their laps. I'm done. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Then I blocked them on social media and in my email. The next morning, I warned security at my office and the doorman at my building that my family members might try to contact me and that I didn't want to see them. Sure enough, they tried. Dad showed up at my office 2 days later. Emma waited outside my building the day after that. I walked past them without a word each time, their pleas falling on deaf ears. Through mutual relatives, I heard that life had gotten tough for them. Dad had to take on full-time hours. The electricity was cut off for a week when they couldn't pay the bill. Jake and Emma were applying for retail jobs, complaining the whole time about how they were overqualified. I felt no sympathy. They had made their choices, just as I had made mine. 6 months later, I received a letter in the mail, no return address. But I recognized Mom's handwriting. Inside was a birthday card, months late, with a simple message, "We're sorry, we miss you. Please call us when you're ready." I put the card in my desk drawer and closed it firmly. Maybe someday I'd forgive them for seeing me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. But not today. Today, I was focusing on myself, my career, my life, the life I had built with my own hard work and determination.